Gifted in the arts of force healing, Nahdar Vebb was the former apprentice to the renowned Jedi Master Kit Fisto, destined for greatness on the merits of both his swordsmanship and his prowess as a healer. However, upon the dawn of the Clone Wars, Fisto is ordered to take up the position as General for the Republic, and forced to leave Nadar to complete his training to knighthood without a master. Due to his natural inclination for healing abilities, the newly knighted Nadar Vebb soon found himself within the fringes of battle, serving as a frontline medic and battlefield leader. In consequence, Vebb was largely left to endure the horrors of war alone, constantly subjected to the inevitable casualties of his clone companions, and the devastating sense of failure that came along with their deaths. Slowly but very surely becoming disenfranchised with many of the Jedi's ways, Nadar was finally reunited with his former master upon the world of Vasek, in a strike mission to capture the CIS Viceroy, Nute Gunray, and land a critical blow upon the Separatists. However, the lead on Gunray was a trap set by Dooku, with the intention of killing Jedi by the hand of General Grievous, and Vebb and Fisto were forced to engage the Separatist warlord and his droids within the halls of his own stronghold. Shocked to see his former Padawan so radically changed since his apprenticeship, Fisto was greatly unsettled by Vebb's burning desire for violent retribution. Unbalanced by his hatred for the Separatists, Vebb was eventually cut off from the assistance of Fisto, and trapped to engage General Grievous in single combat. Overwhelmed by the mechanical might of his Separatist adversary, Vebb was forced into a defensive deadlock, and subsequently killed by way of subterfuge. The failure to eliminate Grievous on Vasek would prove even more costly than first realized. Upon the Separatist invasion of Coruscant, the CIS forces bypassed the Republic's orbital defenses and quickly flooded the capital. Spearheading this mission was General Grievous, and knowing full well the intentions of the Confederacy, a specialized team of Jedi was dispatched to retrieve Supreme Chancellor Palpatine and escort him to safety. Among these highly esteemed warriors was Master Jedi Roron Corobb. Once apprenticed to the legendary illusionist Yarael Poof, Roron Corobb showed great promise even as an initiate, and was hand-selected by his master due to his impressive connection to the Force. Under Poof's tutelage, he would eventually see himself pass the trials into knighthood, and years later would be made a fully fledged Jedi Knight. However, soon the Clone Wars would erupt across the galaxy, and like countless other Jedi, he was positioned to serve as a general for the Republic. Very likely hearing news of his former master's ultimate sacrifice, Corob eventually headed back to Coruscant, and along the way became a spectator for the Jedi Temple's Apprentice Tournament. Drake Logan, a young and promising initiate, excelled in the competition put forth before him, whether because he needed a companion upon the front lines, or he wanted to honor the memory of his fallen master. Roron Corobb took the accolade as his Padawan, and began his apprenticeship. Flash forward several years later, Roron Corobb fought violently with his companions in attempts to ensure the Supreme Chancellor's survival. Ruthlessly pursued by Grievous and his Magna Guards across Coruscant, the Ithorian skills are put to the test, with the survival of the Republic itself very likely on the line. Seeing no other alternatives, Shaak Ti held off the horde of droids, while Corob and Fal Madama secured the Chancellor within the bunker. Now physically spent, and now only 2 rather than 3, Grievous was revealed to be waiting within the bunker itself for this exact series of events to occur. Unable to cope with the 4-pronged onslaught, Master Jedi Corob was eventually cut down, along with his Tal's counterpart shortly thereafter, leaving Logan masterless and forced to endure the ensuing nightmare by himself. Although the Chancellor would ultimately be rescued, the realizations post-Order 66 would mean his sacrifice was all the more for naught. Nadar Vebb was a young Jedi Knight, likely within his late teens or early 20s. Having been through the fires of war since the beginning of the Clone Wars, it is reasonable to believe he was in top physical condition. Small in posture and equipped with Force-enhanced speed, Nadar effortlessly evaded the incoming attacks of Grievous's Magna Guards and quickly exploited their defensive openings. Magna Guards are accredited to having near instantaneous reaction times and are specifically designed to destroy Jedi targets. For Nadar to have displayed speed on this level is incredibly impressive. In addition, he had shown himself capable of shrugging off a tail whip from Grievous's attack animal, recovering almost instantly. Nadar's quickness was made evident again once he confronted Grievous himself, evading several attack sequences and also standing up to his cybernetic strength. Although we do not see much from Vebb in the realm of physicality, his few showings do bear feats that would put him on a very respectable level. Although Corob's age isn't obvious by his appearance, his past apprenticeship with Jarl Poof would likely point him to being somewhere within his middle ages. Regardless, having been accredited to various incursions within the Clone Wars, Corob's age was obviously of no penalty to him. While some sources claim that Ithorians have slower reflexes, I believe this claim is entirely excusable in Corob's instance, given his connection to the Force. Roron Corobb showed no issue dealing with multiple opponents, proving he was more than capable of defending himself from multiple angles at once. In addition, he has shown an affinity for the use of acrobatics, displaying massive leaps and bounds, as well as aerial attacks. Even after having winded himself with his sonic attack in the beginnings of this ordeal, Corob was able to keep pace with his Jedi companions, and defend himself appropriately from Grievous's Magna Guards. Finally, like Vebb, Roron Corobb was capable of meeting Grievous's strength on for at least a time, but was cut down by the General only after having been physically spent by the ongoing chase. In my opinion, this verdict could go either way, depending on which area of physicality one values over the other. Both are equal in strength, having contended with Grievous's power for a similar period of time, as well as the strength of the Magna Guards. While I believe Corob has shown himself more agile, Vebb is easily more evasive, capable of ducking through attack sequences by combination of his small size and fast speed. However, Nadar had time to rest in between his encounters, while Corob did not, displaying a significant degree of endurance his Mon Calamari counterpart had not. This all not considering he had winded himself in the beginnings of this event. However, by taking each combatant's physical advantages and considering their opponent's respective strengths within combat, I do not think either one would be particularly overwhelmed by these aspects alone. Rather, it is the manner of which these advantages would be applied in their fighting style that prove one edge more valuable than the other. For that reason, I will be calling a tie between Nadar Vebb and Roron Corobb in a contest of physicality. Being the Padawan of the legendary swordsman Kit Fisto, I have no doubt that Nadar heavily relied on the tenets of Chi Cho. Chi Cho was the very first form of lightsaber combat, the form of which all leading styles would further build upon. In consequence, Form 1 was extremely simplistic in its maneuvers, focusing on attacking several target zones upon the user's adversaries. This form was developed long before blade-on-blade combat became commonplace, being developed more so for encounters with blaster-wielding opponents, and as such, Chi Cho was succeeded by the more graceful and economic Makashi style. Regardless, Chi Cho excelled in instances when the user is forced to engage multiple opponents, and those who are capable of taking the form to the extreme turn the style's perceived abruptness into a wild yet graceful sequence of attack. Being such an advocate for Chi Cho, Kit Fisto almost certainly emphasized its use in his Padawan. However, Nadar's calling as a Jedi was not to fill the role as a battlefield warrior, but rather the vocation of a healer. Due to this, I believe Nadar's base training was spent into the 6th form of lightsaber combat, also known as 9-Man. Form 6 took all aspects from all previous styles, melding them all into one highly versatile and streamlined skill set. 9-Man was highly favored among practitioners who wished to focus their attention among other skills, such as a life of scholarship, or in Nadar's case, prowess within the Force. While it did offer a flexible skill set, it left the user spread thin amongst all of its tenets, awarding the practitioner the knowledge to deal with a variety of situations, but leaving them remarkably unspecialized. Yet, it was obvious that Nadar was becoming greatly disenfranchised with the Jedi's ways, having his anger unbalance him from Nyman's relatively relaxed demeanor. Instead, he used Shicho's wildness to exploit unexpected attack zones, and aggressively dismantles opponents through Nyman's Force implementation. Whereas the usual practitioner of the Nyman style takes pride in their moderation, Nadar's use of the style borrowed heavily from Form 1's unpredictability, while still remaining versatile, exploiting attack openings viciously with truly intended finality. But this style did not come without paying a massive price. Being so spread thin in regards to dueling skill, while also borrowing so much from Shicho, left Nadar penalized even more so than the usual practitioners of both Forms 1 and 6. Like most Shicho practitioners, it left him blind to the consequences of his actions, and like most Nyman practitioners, it left him dead in the water when confronted with a more skilled and much more powerful adversary. When pressed hard enough and deadlocked, Nadar crumbled under the stress. Like Nahdar Vebb, Roron Corobb's fighting style is not documented in any sort of source, and is rendered to nothing more than what one can speculate. However, given his showings, I believe Corob made use of Form 4 Ataru, as well as Form 5, both Xian and Gemso. Ataru form prides itself on aerial-based attacks, relying on large blade flourishes and force-enhanced movement. Although those who were skilled in this style could cope with multiple opponents, it was usually extremely exhaustive given the intense physical requirements, and as such was better suited for single fighters. Form 5 Xian is a defensive style, relying on a tight defense with swift counterattacks, and its variation to Gemso was a strength-based defensive style that made use of brutish overhead strikes and powerful blows. This hybridization likely partially compensated for Ataru's weakness to multiple opponents, as well as added unexpected strength to a form so acrobatic in nature. Corob's use of quick counterattacks forces opponents to remain cautious, as he quickly alternated his offense between combatants in order to remain a viable threat, and in an instance where the pressure became too much, he used Ataru defensively for evasion. It is also worth stating he seemed to use his environment to his advantage. In consequence, his style was just as defensive as it was offensive, keeping himself well-rounded and versatile to deal with a variety of situations. However, relying so much on acrobatics, raw strength, and immediate counterattacks, it is only rational to assume that Corob's effectiveness in combat drastically decreased as soon as fatigue began to set in. Whereas more conservative forms provide economic maneuvers to fall back on and refuel, Corob's style put him on full throttle until the conclusion of the encounter. Although he had shown himself incredibly long-winded, once he had inevitably reached his limit, he likely struggled to keep pace. It is this very section alone that nearly made me scrap this entire matchup altogether. This verdict is going to totally depend on how one interprets the inconsistencies between sources. Magna Guards are one of the most inconsistent adversaries within the entire Star Wars mythos. In some mediums, they're portrayed to be a moderate threat to some of the greatest of duelists. In others, they are incredibly dangerous, capable of going toe-to-toe with the best. And in a certain source in particular, it totally depends on the episode, and they need to be entertaining. Sometimes immediately being dispatched by someone who is a medium-tier duelist at best, and other times posing a serious threat to the most top tier. If you have been watching my videos for a while, you already know how I feel about Grievous's portrayal in TCW, and how inconsistent it is compared to other sources. By assuming that either one of these combatants' showings are superior to the other, I would be massively underestimating the loser of this section, and discrediting the showings of him and many of the other characters within their respective source material. There is no question that Nahdar Vebb's showings are more impressive from a superficial view. He had dismantled several Magna Guards himself, whereas Corob only killed one by way of ambush. Nadar contended with Grievous by himself for a time, whereas Corob had the assistance of Falmadama. This in many ways would imply that Nadar is either a top-tier duelist, within the realm of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, would imply that Roron Corobb, Val Madama, and Shaak Ti are hopelessly novice in the face of their TCW contemporary, both of which are ridiculous conclusions. However, for the sake of imparting some sort of consistency in this matchup alone, I will be considering Nahdar Vebb's showings the superior feats in this matchup to a marginal degree. Although I do believe it should be noted that Corob is forced to worry about the Supreme Chancellor, as well as trek through Coruscant in his encounter. Also, while I do not believe that form advantages play a massive role in determining the victor between duelists, I would argue that Naddar's fighting style is much more sustainable, that he would be able to cope with whatever Corob could throw at him. Extremely evasive, more versatile, and more explosive in his counterattacks, I believe Naddar's style is more suited for a prolonged duel, whereas Corob seems to be somewhat limited in his options. This supposed form advantage combined with his showings will be enough to tip the balance for this category. After much deliberation, I give the advantage to Nahdar Vebb in a contest of dueling skill. Both of these combatants made use of a single standard lightsaber with a standard hilt and blade length. No advantage will be given, and there is no extra details to be made note of. As a Jedi healer, Nahdar was trained first and foremost to wield the Force. His inclination for bladed combat was likely a consequence of his desire for immediate and direct retribution. Most obviously, Nahdar is very adept in the Force heal ability, and he is stated in the Clone Wars campaign guide as capable of healing clone troopers to keep fighting despite their grievous injuries. Although he has never been seen using this ability on himself in combat, it's reasonable to assume that he could heal at least very superficial wounds. The Clone Wars campaign guide also cites him of being capable of energy negation, adding in a degree of defensive abilities to keep him well-rounded and versatile. While Naddar's magnitude in the Force wasn't too worthy of note, he has shown himself able to make use of it effectively and in tandem with his skill as a duelist. Much like his dueling style, Nahdar used the Force directly and very aggressively, exploiting openings without hesitation to full effect. Roron Corobb is the apprentice to illusionist Ural Poof, so is likely very adept in the use of his Force abilities. Keeping true to his use of Ataru, Corobb is an extremely skilled acrobat, making use of Force-enhanced leaps and bounds, allowing him to clear massive distances. While locked in battle, he used these acrobatics to evade opponents' attacks, put distance between them. It has also proven that in true Ataru fashion, he has no qualms attacking from over top of an opponent, and would likely exploit these sorts of aerial openings whenever possible. His Force push appeared to also be very potent. Although we only see him use this ability once, and it is ultimately evaded by Grievous, the impact was enough to crack through the walls of the senatorial building, and rupture whatever piece of infrastructure was within that section of the interior. Even regardless, these showings of acrobatics and Force pushes are not nearly as impressive as Corobb's most unique ability. Being an Ithorian, Corobb possessed a massive throat sac and two large mouth openings. When confronted with danger, Ithorians are capable of bellowing a massive sonic boom through their vocal system, stunning opponents and splintering eardrums with almost explosive characteristics. In the hands of Corobb, this ability was even more effective and devastating. Enhancing it with his Force powers, Corobb's bellow is capable of collapsing the hallway of the senatorial building, bludgeoning his opponent and leaving him totally buried within the debris. Just mere moments later, Corobb made use of this ability again to wipe away countless super battle droids and even ripping the transparent steel flooring from out underneath them, sustaining this sonic attack for an incredible period of time. Only through Grievous' cybernetic strength was he able to endure this storm, and still with great difficulty. It should be noted that this attack likely cannot be used at the drop of a hat, as it seems to be fairly taxing and time intensive to start up. Also, essentially being a massive Force shout, it could leave the user entirely winded. It may not be a viable option once the combatant is already exhausted. Nevertheless, the ability's effectiveness is clearly obvious. Both combatants have proven themselves adept in their use of the Force, but I do think there is an advantage to be awarded here. Nadar Vebb has shown himself skilled within the Force, but he simply does not match Corob's magnitude, and certainly could not replicate his unique ability. While Nadar is capable of Force deflection, as well as energy negation, both of which could be useful in defending from this attack, I simply can't bring myself to believe that he could sustain this effect for the entire duration of Corob's shout, given its incredible magnitude. In addition, I believe Corob's use of Force-enhanced acrobatics will be a boon to him, allowing him to exploit attack sequences that would otherwise not be possible, as well as award him a degree of evasion. However, this category is not a trump card for Corob. Like his lightsaber style, Corob's use of the Force commits a significant portion of his endurance, either by way of demanding physical movement, or the time and massive energy expenditure of his guttural shout. And again, like his lightsaber style, Corob is making the assumption that his opponent cannot weather the storm. If his assumption is proven wrong, Corob likely suffers a significant penalty to his combative effectiveness overall. Despite this inherent risk, there is no denying Corob is more effective in this regard, and it is for that reason I will be awarding him the advantage in a contest of Force powers. Ultimately, I see this match being very long-winded. While Corob possesses the more exertive style, Nadar is equally aggressive, and assuming he is as vindictive towards Corob as he was against his opponents in Grievous' lair, I see both combatants going full force for the entirety of the duel. For the majority of the battle, they would spar equally with one another in terms of their dueling skill, Corob hammering powerful blows and evading with acrobatics, while Nadar would likely be playing to Nyman's fairly relaxed blade work and explosively exploiting attack openings with Shi Cho. However, one obstacle I believe Corob would likely face is danger from Nadar's counterattacks and overall unpredictability. Being so focused on offensive output and relying on counterattacks, it's very likely that he would gradually become more and more pressured as time goes on. But given his endurance, I do not think he would suffer from fatigue. While I believe Nadar would have the advantage in dueling, I do not see him putting something over Corob that he could not answer. In addition, while I believe Nadar is certainly adept in his use of the Force, I highly doubt he could use it in a way that would be creative or unexpected enough to throw off Corob. Eventually, given time, and in consequence to Corob's acrobatics or Nadar's evasion, there will be distance put between the two, and with ample space, Corob would make use of his Force shout and hammer Nadar's senses whilst bludgeoning him with raw force. While I do think Nadar could partially weather the storm, it would be enough to weaken him so much that Corob's overbearing offensive would eventually tire him out and overwhelm his rather unspecialized dueling abilities. Now, having been finally confronted with a much more dire of a scenario, Nadar's fighting style would fail him, and either through a powerful blow or rapid counterattack, I believe Corob would finally defeat his counterpart. As such, I declare Roron Corobb the victor of the match. Thanks for tuning into this versus video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. This is the first one I've done it in a good while, so please bear with me as I get back into the swing of things. I would really like to make these next upcoming versus videos a bit more experimental, so you may notice some stylistic or formative changes in the next upcoming few. You can expect the wait to also be a lot shorter for the next one. I didn't intend it for it to take this long to put together, I just got distracted by other projects. Also, today I just hit 14,000 subscribers, and I would like to thank you all for your continued support. It is a personal goal of mine to reach at least 20k by February, so hopefully my upload schedule will be a bit more consistent in the hopes of achieving that. Well, that's enough for me for now, guys. As I said before, thanks for tuning in, and like always, may the Force be with you.